Coming up on a very exciting episode of That Was a Show goes to Ireland. Father Ted was a show. In fact, it was the most successful Irish sitcom ever. This surprisingly dark, twisted sitcom left an indelible mark on the Emerald Isle, but it's been largely forgotten over on this side of the pond. It's about 3 Catholic priests who were banished to the fictitious Craggy Island for various sins and now live together as roommates. How did this show become so uniquely iconic with a mere 25 episodes in existence? Brynn, Aaron, and Barry hop on a plane and fly to Ireland to find out. We grew up during peak sitcom, Seinfeld, Friends, The Fresh Prince. But those shows were diamonds in the rough. This podcast is not about those diamonds. It's about the rough. Some sitcoms were briefly popular in their time. Some were canceled almost immediately. You probably won't recognize most of these, and you'll ask, that was a show?
That was a show?
The podcast about failed or forgotten sitcoms from the 80s and 90s, starring
Brynn Byrne,
Aaron Yeger,
And Andrew Helmer as Barry.
a Radio Gizmo production.
Welcome back, everybody. Hi, Brynn. Hi, Barry.
Hey, Aaron.
Hello, how are you guys?
Good.
We're pretty good.
Hello.
This is our first recording session together in a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I looked. It was April 16th, so
Yeah.
almost 2 months for me, but only about a week for you guys, right?
Yeah. We did a little bonus rewatch, which was fun. Yeah, that was a fun little weird episode.
It was a great episode that I 100% listened to.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, you're always missed, Barry, but, it's fun to do these, like, more casual episodes occasionally. Just
Quick and dirty.
quick and dirty, yeah. A quickie, if you will.
Oh, boy.
Oh boy. So
Yeah, Barry,
Oh,
for all
boy.
you know, it could be, since, you very sarcastically said you listened to it. It could
I
have
listened
been,
to it. Of course I did.
it could have been a very pornographic episode.
Yeah, well.
And that's like our spin-off. It's just me
And
and Aaron.
I would never know. Like somebody would come up to me years later and they'd just be like, it's really weird the tone the episodes take when you're not around. And I would just agree with them. I'd be like, I know, but that's just
they
a
gotta
little
do their
extra.
thing.
It's a little extra flavor that they bring to things, and that's it. But they do a great job. And they're like, are you sure you know what you're talking about? Of course, I have utter faith. I have utter faith in them. I told them to do it.
Perhaps we should even share with our audience one of the reasons why we took a bit of a break. Of course, it didn't disrupt our episode release schedule because we got well ahead before leaving on the break.
Like real podcasts,
like real
do.
podcasters, like real professionals.
Guys, we were ahead of the game. It's very
we were
exciting.
ahead.
Yeah.
So Brynn and I went on what was originally planned as a honeymoon trip that was long delayed by the COVID pandemic and ended up becoming a 4th anniversary trip to a few countries in Europe. So, sharing this in case any of you out there are trying to develop one of those newfangled parasocial relationships with us.
Yeah.
And you want to know about our lives. But
I didn't even know you guys were an item.
Now, here's
you didn't speak at our wedding or anything like that.
Now here's an extra exciting bit though to round out the story for the purposes of Twas that Mr. Barry here, Mr. Helmer also had a trip to Europe, and we had 1 day of overlap in Dublin, Ireland.
Yeah, it was pretty wild seeing you guys in a different country.
Yeah, and it was not planned that way. We found out after we had each independently planned the timing of our trips that we were going to have a 1 day overlap in that city, and realized, oh, well, we obviously have to find a way to meet up.
Yeah.
And we did then what we're doing now, which is, I'm drinking a Guinness
Yeah, so am I.
in celebration and commemoration of that. And perhaps this is the point in the podcast where I'll play the little clip. So after we met up at a pub there, out on the streets, we recorded a quick little greeting. So let's go ahead and cue that.
We're coming at you live from Temple Bar in Dublin, Ireland. This is Aaron.
Brynn.
And Barry. And we're all here together, somehow, as our paths have crossed on a trip to Dublin.
All the way across the world, another continent.
It's not really live, it's more like live to tape.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, live to tape.
We're a little hoarse, we're a little world weary here, but, enjoying each other's company and bringing you this little snippet of Twas in Ireland.
Twas goes to Ireland. like an episode of a sitcom. Raise a Guinness, sláinte, everybody.
Sláinte.
And we're back.
What fun we had.
Yeah, we had to go all the way to Ireland to actually see each other.
That's right. Yeah, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the first time we hung out in a while.
Yeah, it was, which is wild because we're very good friends. It's hard being an adult and, making plans with people. It's
not the way I do it.
Now, a bit of a segue here, as you will soon learn. We chose a show for this podcast that is also inspired by that little meetup. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about that, Barry?
All right, I'll do that. So this week, basically because we were in Ireland and we were hanging out in Ireland, we decided to go for Ireland's most famous sitcom, Father Ted.
Woo!
So I will go with that, and we'll just go with Father Ted Was a Show. This UK sitcom aired for 3 seasons from 1995 to 1998 and concerned the misadventures of 3 priests living together on the fictional Craggy Island, said to be off the coast of Galway in Ireland. All 3 priests have been banished to the island, all of them for their various misdeeds and sins. The title character, Ted, played by Dermot Morgan, is the quintessential straight man. Basically nice, if not vain man, forced to endure a purgatorial life amongst the cartoon characters that inhabit the island. Chief among them are his fellow priests, the doofy Father Dugan, played by Ardell O'Hanlon, and the monstrous drunken mess of a creature that is Father Jack, played by Frank Kelly. Now, the obvious thing here is that Father Ted, as a show, was neither failed nor could it ever truly be forgotten. It is indeed one of the most beloved sitcoms of all time, though perhaps not talked about as much in North America these days.
Yeah.
Though much about its rough edge sense of humor would likely not fly today, it still ranks among many critics as one of their all-time favorites. It does, however, have a bit of a sad footnote in that lead actor Dermot Morgan tragically passed away the day after shooting the series finale from a heart attack at the age of 45.
Wow.
Yeah, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Okay.
Yeah. Right off the top, I'm just going to say, I feel like this still kind of wedges its way into the canon of our podcast because, as you mentioned, although it's a beloved show there and widely known in Ireland and the UK, in North America, it used to be known better and it was syndicated on networks here. But it kind of disappeared.
It's been forgotten North Americans
in a way that other similar shows from that part of the world, let's say a Blackadder, or there's a few other shows from that era.
I would argue that Father Ted is way better known over here than Blackadder ever has been. Blackadder's great.
I don't even know what Blackadder is.
Blackadder is Rowan Atkinson's sitcom set in medieval England.
Oh,
it's very,
okay.
very, very funny. Very similar sense of humor, actually.
Yeah, or a better example, I'm trying to remember.
Are you trying to think of Faulty Towers?
Faulty Towers, that's what I'm trying to think of. I guess what I mean is at least growing up in that era, I would see shows like Blackadder and Faulty Towers come on Canadian television all the time.
Like CBC?
It was probably mostly on CBC, but I certainly never saw Father Ted. I recognized the name, like when you mentioned it, I'd heard of the show, but I had never seen a single second of this show on TV.
I watched it a lot when I was young.
Oh, that's fun.
Sweet.
So
I
mean,
didn't. It missed me.
95 to 98. But on the other hand, I watched all of those shows. I watched Blackadder. I love Faulty Towers.
Yeah.
Like it's and Father Ted, I was excited to kind of cover it and a little worried because I've always known that there are things in it that I shouldn't be laughing at all the time. Even when I was a kid, I'd be like, "Oh, that's a little far." But but it is a show that like holds a very, very fond place in my heart, and I have not seen it in years.
Yeah.
And it was like to the point where like I can remember various bits and pieces of it, but not a lot. Like honestly, mostly what I remembered was just Father Jack just being like
gross.
A monster.
Yeah.
Which is, it's funny because if you ever like the if you read the way the two writers who did the show like kind of described all the characters, he's pretty much always described as a vile creature.
Yeah. And it's amazing because, and that was one of the things that surprised me about the show, because I'd read like what the premise is, and knowing that, there's these three priests and the oldest one is kind of this angry, drunken character, but I was expecting the version that I suppose you would have in an American show of that type of character, which would have bits and pieces of those types of attitudes and symbols of those behaviors. Yeah. But this show leans into that so hard. Yeah. He doesn't even speak in full sentences.
Yeah, he's like an ogre. Like he always has mucus on his face.
Crusty mucus.
One of his eyes is like clouded over at all times.
He always has dried vomit like on his face. He's a disgusting. And then there's glimpses of the kind of person he was when he was like younger, which is even worse.
Really dark.
Which is even worse. And it's always like, like he was his supposed sins for being cast off out of the mainland were basically just being complete drunk and a womanizer during his days. And like Ted reveres him. Yeah. And like it's like Ted it's always contrasted with how Ted is talking about him, because you just know he's awful.
Yeah. But does he really revere him, or is it more like he came before me? So
that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Like he feels this obligation because he's like this senior priest. And, he says at one point in that pilot episode, it's like, oh, it's like an honor for us to take care of him in his old age, like to Dougal. Yeah. And it's like, really? And he's like so abusive and rude. And the only reason, he is able to not actually physically harm them is because he's like old and feeble. But he would if he could. Yeah, you get the sense that he would like beat up his fellow priests if he could.
He's terrible, and it's very obvious. What I like about this show is that it's very obvious the editorial bent of the show itself. Yeah. He's supposed to be an awful, despicable person. There's no gray area. There's no question about it. Yeah. I did read one sort of very brief, I can't remember, sort of description of the show that essentially, apart from Father Ted, all the other characters are very two-dimensional, but in a very deliberate way. He's deliberately a cartoonish version of a certain type of personality.
There's some great, it's certainly not the type of show you expect it to be. I mean, no. It's certainly, you really go into it, you don't really expect like a Seinfeld-esque, these are like just awful versions of these people. Like Ted's not like awful, but he's in it for himself. And he's only really, he doesn't care. Like none of them care about none of them care about religion at all.
Yeah, which is wild.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Like, why did they become
oh my god,
priests?
Dugan in the pilot.
Dugan, yeah.
All of his like talk about like you're not really supposed to take all that at face value. Yes, you are.
Yeah, they're
Are
talking.
you?
Yeah, the whole thing of like eternal life in heaven or whatever, and he's like, yeah, but that's it. You're not really supposed to take that at face value.
Yeah.
Yes, you are. Oh, and he's like genuinely surprised. He's like, oh,
Or they go to see the tarot reader. And and he's like, well, come on, that's really ridiculous. And he's like, is it really any more ridiculous than some of the things we learned about in school?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm like laughing a lot now just recalling it. Like, it is a very funny show.
Yeah.
Like, I do
Yeah.
recommend, but it is dark. So basically all the like really rough tropes and realities of like the Catholic institutions are really touched upon in this show.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you're sensitive to any of that stuff, maybe it's not right. But if you have like a dark sense of humor about those institutions, I think it's like, you'll really enjoy it.
Some people might find it hard to take to like build a comedy around some of these commentaries, but it is very clear in the show. The show is not on the side of a lot of these like dark things. Like the show is.
It's clearly
the
you
show
know
is-
what the opinion of the show is.
The
which
show is a intense commentary. The show is taking the piss out of society.
Yeah.
Not just the Catholic Church there, but a lot of aspects of society so hard. Oh man.
And sometimes the jokes like they come out of nowhere too. Like in the one episode where he's talking to the cop. It was like the cops used to, cops and priests used to get along. I mean, we stood behind you, you guys stood behind us, drunk driving tickets gone, maybe the odd murder every now and then.
Yeah, just like brushing these things under the rug, like the way they're talking about it. Yeah, it's very dark humor, but it is in some ways, in terms of a commentary, a little bit ahead of its time.
Yeah,
like it's kind of like, some of it doesn't hold up today, but some aspects of it, you're like, wow, I can't believe they went there back in '95.
Yeah. Especially like by like Irish people, because it's like famously a very Catholic place. So the fact that they, were able to like take the piss out of it in such a way was like very like, it's like very brave,
I read an interesting quote from the actor John Michael Higgins. He's you would know him.
Yep.
He's an American comedian. I think he hosts a game show now, but he was one of the people. There's been several attempts at making this for an American audience, and he was one of the people cast as Father Ted, and he was talking about how like it only would work in Ireland because basically like they're all so used to making these jokes, and that a lot of the jokes just become basically Irish jokes, where like Americans don't have the same willingness to go against the church in their religion,
to take down
their
major
comedy
institutions.
Well, it is like just, I think dark humor in general is like a very like Irish thing. Like it is like a part of the culture. Like it is like, you go to like the darkness in.
Oh, very much so. Very much.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know. It's very, I agree. I don't think it could ever have been made in North America. And, I think North Americans, like it's like one of those things where it's like Canadian television as well. Like it's, it's one of those things where our shows could not be made in the States for the most part, but they should be enjoyed by people in the States. And there's never enough push for a lot of, shows that are not American shows to be enjoyed internationally. Like it's just very challenging to get like all because there is like very specific things that we can laugh about here but Americans can't, and
Mhm.
people in the UK or Ireland or anywhere really can laugh at, but we can't laugh at. So it's it's very interesting. But I always like love to take a peek at other like cultures and other countries' shows and like what is I'm always like so interested, and I so maybe this will make me to do more of a deep dive. And
the closest comparison I could think of trying to adapt this for America is because this was a BBC show. I mean, it's a very Irish show, but it's produced by the BBC.
It was Channel 4.
Channel 4.
Yeah.
And so thinking of like The Office, which started on the BBC and then was adapted for an American audience. I like both versions. They are very different. And the British Office is darker and it is drier, and it is more unapologetic in the way that it criticizes that type of workplace and that type of boss. And like in the American version, no matter how kind of despicable the day-to-day behavior of a character may be, there's always a warm, endearing side to them. There's always another
little bit of heart.
Aspect to them of heart. You know, the Michael Scott character has heart. He says and does stupid things, but he also does have heart. The boss in the British Office has way less heart. Has like a tiny fraction of the amount of heart, if any. And like,
I think that boils down to the close relationship that Stephen Merchant and Ricky Gervais had with the American creators, because like they were quick to tell them like, look, you can't do it the same way. Like here in the US, like I've been listening to a lot of the Office ladies and like just doing a lot of like, like just hearing a lot about the production of The Office. And that was like one of the things, like they said that Michael Scott can't be bad at his job the way David Brent is.
Yeah.
Like because Americans won't be able to connect to that. They'll get really pissed off. So even though Michael Scott's a dummy, he has to be really good at sales or something. And that's what they did. And I thought that was like a brilliant way to like solve that issue.
And it doesn't, and that show doesn't really like start to work until season 2 when they very firmly started letting go of that. Yeah. Because like if you watch like season 1 of The Office, the American Office, after watching season 1 of the UK Office, you will see so many scenes completely recreated. The pilots are almost identical, complete with the lines, and it just feels like I use this as a way to describe a lot of things that I just feel aren't working, and it's in the Royal Tenenbaums when Royal is invited to watch one of Margot's plays, and when she's a child and all the kids are, it looks like a very dramatic play, but all the kids are in animal costumes because it's about animals being poached, and they ask Royal what he thought of it, and he goes, it didn't seem believable. And they're like, well, what did you think of the characters? What characters? A bunch of kids dressed up in animal costumes. And that's what I think of when I'm trying to watch the American Office in the beginning. Like I can watch it now because I like the characters. Yeah. But when the show first aired, I was like, this show's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to bring it back to Father Ted,
Father Ted.
like, could they have done like a version? I don't know.
No, because
they can't sand the edges off of that. The whole point.
The point is
that it's
edge.
a black comedy. Yeah.
I think that a version of The Office with heart and with endearing characters as a rom-com is something people obviously wanted to see. I don't think an equivalent version of this show would work for anyone.
Yeah.
No, but I do have one casting suggestion, which is, I mean, there's only one Father Frank for American, and that would be TV's Frank Reynolds, Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean
as like the Father Jack.
Father Jack. Sorry, he's
equivalent.
played by Frank Kelly. Yeah. Father Jack. Yeah. I mean, he's gotta be DeVito.
Yeah.
Gotta be DeVito.
If you had who's the actor that I'm thinking of who could be Ted? It's the guy who's in I'm gonna have to
You're
cut.
giving us a lot.
I'm gonna
You're
have
giving
to
us
cut.
a lot
I'm gonna
to
have
go
to
on.
cut this out.
No,
But
you're gonna have to leave it.
He's in Bridesmaids. He's in.
Are you trying to say John Hamm?
No.
No.
He's
oh, yeah,
Irish.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's
you're
Irish.
yeah.
Tall Irish
I
Chris
know.
O'Dowd. Chris
Very
O'Dowd.
funny.
Chris O'Dowd.
Chris O'Dowd
Yes.
from the IT.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If he were banished to the States and then
Oh,
we're
that'd be good.
forced to live with
Okay.
two really terrible
Okay,
American
so
priests.
we're figuring this out in
Yeah.
real time here. So Chris
Yeah.
O'Dowd as
Let's
Ted.
pitch it.
Chris O'Dowd as Ted. Danny DeVito as
As
Father
Jack,
yeah.
And who would be we haven't even really talked about the young
Dougal.
Dougal, who is just Dugan, who is just great.
He's just a dummy.
yeah.
He's just a dummy. He's just kind of out to lunch, but he says things like that thing about he doesn't really believe any of the things.
An
It's-
organized
it's-
religion.
yeah,
It's like
it's-
you're literally
I don't
a
believe
priest.
it on
Yeah.
on
I don't really
TV.
believe it.
He's being interviewed by a news program, and he says,
Yeah.
"I don't really believe in organized religion."
Yeah, he's
in his collar.
yeah. At one point,
Yeah.
one of my notes is he based on Homer Simpson? Because he's like that kind of oblivious and silly.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's not the worst way to describe it.
Yeah. Oh, who would play him in our
Yeah.
fan fiction version?
We'll think about it. We may have to
we
bounce back to
gotta-
that,
yeah,
but
we
we'll
gotta-
find someone. There was that little in episode 1 that sort of so they're on Craggy Island, which is a fictional island, but it's
It definitely had the same.
the exteriors are shot in the Aran.
The Aran
Islands.
Islands, yeah, which is like if anyone has seen the Banshees of Inisherin,
Same.
it's the same vibe. It's
Same
like
vibe.
that very remote island,
Yeah.
you know, like very few people populate, like
And-
living on there.
And that's one of my notes is like, I wonder if this show helped inspire that movie because
yeah, maybe.
one of the themes supposedly in this show, and I believe it, although we only watched a couple episodes, is
Yeah.
the loneliness and isolation of this island,
Yeah.
which is the main backbone of the movie, The Banshees of Inisherin, is people just
Yeah.
like going bonkers out of loneliness, basically.
Yeah.
Now, we're way into the weeds here. Is it worth going through episode by episode? I mean,
Sure.
I feel
Yeah.
like
Sure,
in this, yeah. So, I mean, we've covered a lot of it, but episode 1 is essentially there's no build up. There's no inciting incident. We come in. The priests have been living together for an unknown amount of time. Bits about their backstory will only sort of drip in over the rest of the show.
Yeah.
But you basically catch up immediately with, Ted and Dougal are, doing their daily things. Ted is trying to do he's trying to figure out how to do the daily masses and who's going to cover them. And he occasionally tries to get, Jack to maybe take one of the masses off his hands, to which he is just sworn at, and just leads to Ted just doing all the masses himself all the time. He gets a call from a television sequence. Is that what I'm trying to say? That's not sequence. What am I trying to say?
Like a field
Segment.
segment producer.
Yeah.
There we go. So he gets a call from a television segment producer who wants to do, who's doing a bit of a story on Craggy Island and its inhabitants. And he thought it would be a good idea to interview the priests living there, to which Ted says he is the only one living there because he knows that putting Dougal or Jack on TV will lead to great embarrassment, but will also take the spotlight off of himself.
Yeah.
Because really,
he clearly
Ted-
just wants to be a star for a.
Ted wants to be on TV
Yeah,
very,
yeah.
very
Yeah, it's
badly.
his favorite show. He wants to be the only one who gets to be on it.
And I like how they're talking about they've been talking to priests in Ireland. He's like, oh well, you were our first choice too, and it just shows like
A
his
list of
name,
people. He's at the very
the
fifth.
very bottom of a bunch of crossed out
Yeah.
names.
Yeah.
He's the bottom of the barrel that they've
Yeah.
had to resort to. And then he tries to get the other guys out of there. It's funny, like they wanted to get Jack out of there, and Jack they wanted to lure him into a wheelchair so they could wheel him out. He can walk, he just chooses not to. But that
Yeah.
way they could like tie him to the wheelchair and push him around. So they used a bottle of Jameson to try to lure him into the chair.
It's,
he's
it's a very funny sight
He's
gag.
constantly
Yeah.
trying to fight them. Earlier in
Yeah.
the episode, he threw an empty bottle at the TV, which exploded,
Yeah.
which was a pretty good physical gag, actually, because it blew up.
Yeah. Another kind of a subplot going on in the episode is that Craggy Island is having their annual fun fair.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is like the
in
bleakest
the field.
carnival ever.
It's so bleak.
just the sight gag of the only, one of the only rides there being a giant crane lifting up a bench and putting that people are sitting on,
Yeah.
and
it's like 1/16 of a Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
Basically, it's just lifting a bench up and down.
Like, I mean, you guys should get an idea of how, like, the show is quite funny because we're having fun just like recounting.
I'm trying to think of all the things that are in the fun fair, because there are so many sight gags that are like barely commented on.
They're buried.
Yeah,
A lot
yeah.
of them were signs identifying activities that are like deep in the background. One of them was duck startling.
There's the spinning cat, which is
Yeah.
just a cat on a turntable going around and around.
There was,
I think it was the Pond of Fear.
That cat looked a lot like Gizmo, by the way.
yeah.
Yeah.
There was the TV crew was filming some musicians, and there was what was probably a parody of the banjo player from the movie Deliverance.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's dark. It's
Yeah,
dark and funny.
It's very, very funny.
So many
There's-
silly
because
sight
it's
gags.
supposed to be the bleakest fair possible.
There's Tom. There's Tom, the local Tom who always wears the "I Shot JR" shirt.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm in the right place. Is there a guy staring at you menacingly wearing a I Shot JR shirt? He's like, oh, yes,
Yeah.
actually.
And it's a guy with a unibrow, and at one
Yeah.
point he says to someone
He
out of
shoots
nowhere,
a pigeon,
he says,
too.
like, I killed a man once. Like,
Yeah,
just
and
out
Ted
of
says
nowhere.
we'll have to talk about that
We'll have to talk
later.
about yeah, he shoots it. He explodes a pigeon with a
With
rifle.
Yeah.
Another really great sight gag, because
Yeah.
I could not even imagine a more cartoonish looking
Yeah.
bird exploding
Yeah.
on camera.
Yeah.
Like they did it like right out of Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just
wasn't
want to
ex-
watch Father Ted now.
I know. I wasn't expecting this show to be. Yeah, Craggy Island is presented as a surrealist environment that is not bound by expectations of reality in any way.
Mhm.
All the people who live there are like twisted and weird. And yeah, to the point where I hadn't thought about this, but now that you mentioned it, it really is like a cartoon. Like it really is like Looney Tunes level
Yeah.
cartoonishness.
I really found Mrs. Doyle to be quite a funny character as well, who's like
Especially her subplot in the second
an
episode.
episode that we watched. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is a woman who, anyone who grew up going to like a Catholic church, there was always that lady who was the long-suffering lady who would like look after the priests and do things for the priests. So this woman was like kind of like their housekeeper,
yeah, she's
caretaker.
always bringing tea.
Yeah, yeah,
Constantly
yeah,
bringing
yeah.
tea.
Or you just
And-
have a cuppa.
Yeah, yeah. And she's just kind of like a little bit also kind of out to lunch herself, like is oblivious to, everybody's like, I don't know. She's just kind of in her own little world. Like she's
Yeah.
a very bubbly lady, very kind of well-meaning, but she's also like very bumbling herself. But I just thought it was such a fun character because like those women totally like exist like in an old school community
Yeah.
that is sort of like centered around a church. Like it is like a
She's-
very real person.
She's like the epitome of Irish hospitality taken
yeah,
to the
exactly.
extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they never say her first name either. And there was like a gag with that in I think it was the second episode.
It
where,
was, yeah.
Where every time they're saying Mrs. and like they're about to say her first name and then Doyle, there's always some really like loud interruption and like that blocks. So it's kind of like the waitress on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like they never know her first
Yeah.
name. I don't know if it's revealed maybe at some point.
Should we talk about
but-
the plot of the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
episode we watch? And then
Speaking of Mrs. Doyle.
we'll go into the details.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the second episode we watched was season 3, episode 4. It was entitled "The Mainland," and that's where basically all of our characters have to pop over to Galway because Ted has to pick up his gambling winnings.
Yeah, that's the reason they're going. They collect 200 pounds in gambling winnings,
and they got and then they gotta get Father Jack some new glasses because crows keep stealing them.
Oh man, that was a weird. I was not expecting that one.
And then Mrs. Doyle comes along because she just wants to have tea with one of her old friends. Dougal wants to see the caves. They never specify which caves. They're just going to see the caves. Which also leads to them in a very long, protracted sequence, getting lost in the caves and running into a fellow priest who is a reoccurring character who's played by Graham Norton, who is like one of the most ridiculous
He's so hilarious
characters. Yeah, he's so ridiculous.
Yeah. What's funny about this show is that it takes very low stakes, very mundane situations and then brings out the details, it takes little details of these mundane situations and explodes them in the most absurd, over the top. Like even that thing of the crows stealing his glasses, they did a shot where it's like a crow's POV flying down from the sky and ripping the glasses off of his face while he's like, oh my God, he looked so disgusting in that close up, and then steals his glasses. And then they cut to like a crow's nest built in a tree made out of like 100 pairs of glasses. Like they just take those little gags and just
there's like the one like there's a poster up outside of the optometrist's office that says "Tired of crows stealing your glasses? Like try these ear clips." It's just
anti-crow like ear clips. Like the there was a thing when Mrs. Doyle meets up with her friend. They get into an argument over who's going to pay. Like they both want to pay the bill. And it becomes like a physical knockdown, drag out fight between the two of them that gets them arrested and thrown in jail. But the other little sight gag that I found so amusing there.
You're talking about all the cups?
Yeah. They'd been drinking tea for a few hours, but instead of refilling the same cups, their tabletop has about, 10 to 15 empty teacups on it.
But I think the joke is supposed to be as if they're at a bar and they've had too many like drinks, boozy drinks.
Exactly, because at a bar you don't refill the same glass.
But because they're such wholesome ladies, they're just drinking tea, and that's what's getting them carried away.
But they get into a fighting mood. So it's as if they're like drunk in a bar after several pints, but it's tea. It's very funny.
It is a very, very funny escalation of like
very
who
silly.
is going to pick up the bill because who's more polite than the other.
Yeah.
Okay, Barry, continue with the rest of the summary. We keep going off the rails.
I mean,
so basically they go to the caves.
Yeah, that's about it.
And then but they come across
Oh my
somebody.
God, I forgot.
Yeah, the funniest part
I forgot
of the
about
episode.
Yeah, so I gotta look. I forgot the actor's name already.
Yeah,
I completely
the other fight scene.
Yeah.
This show is like a fever dream.
It really is. Right. So one of the things is outside of the caves, they run into beloved sitcom star Richard Wilson, star of One Foot in the Grave, who was very well known for his catchphrase, "I don't believe that." And
or, I don't believe it.
I don't believe it. And Ted and Dougal have been quoting it like incessantly throughout it because the episode begins with Dougal just sitting down to watch the show.
Watching it,
and then they've been quoting it incessantly, and then they happen to see this guy, and like Ted thinks it's a great idea to go over and like shout the catchphrase at the guy, which leads him to like just like
To a brawl.
Yeah, to a brawl.
He screams the catchphrase
Yeah.
at the guy.
and then he keeps like it keeps getting into situations where he's just naturally saying, "I don't believe it," and then he's
Pissing him off
overhearing
more,
it
yeah.
because he just happens to be in earshot. Yeah, it's a
It's so classic because they have a shot where it's from Dougal's perspective and he's looking over in the distance and you just see the actor start beating the shit out of like
Ted, yeah.
Ted.
Yeah.
And it's just so good. It's just so
just
well.
relentlessly
and
beating
he,
on
and he
him.
trudges back over.
And he tries to say it again. You can hear
Yeah.
you can tell that he tries to say it again and then he goes after him again.
The guy just
People
starts
are
wailing
trying
on
to
him.
like separate them.
So he like trudges back to Dougal, and he's like so completely like downtrodden,
Devastated,
And like
yeah.
Dougal's like, "Oh, how'd that go then?" Like even though he watched
Yeah.
it, he's like, "No, it was okay." And he's like,
Yeah.
Did you say the line? Yeah. Did he find it
Yeah.
funny? No.
No.
Sidebar. Okay, did you guys used to watch One Foot in the Grave at your parents' house growing up, Barry?
No, that one is not known to me. I didn't
Okay,
watch
which
that.
I've never even heard of it
I didn't watch
before.
that one, and I never watched Are You Being Served?
Okay. Yeah, I had never heard of it either, but for some reason, I think I planted a false memory in my brain because the reason I ask is I'm like, I feel like I went like when, we used to hang out as like teenagers. I remember going to your parents' place and seeing all kinds of random TV on that I had never seen before.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I just implanted. I'm like, did I see that in passing playing at your parents' house?
Maybe my
But-
parents really have always been big fans of the BBC.
Yeah,
And to this day, my mom watches a lot of BBC programming.
It's
So
funny. Does she watch EastEnders?
no, that would be a little crass
No.
for her, I think.
okay.
How about Coronation Street?
You know what? She mostly likes she's just outing my mom. She mostly likes like English like murder dramas.
Okay.
She likes a good detective story.
that's
And
funny.
all the better if they have a charming accent.
And also, do we think that in Extras, the show that Ricky Gervais's character eventually makes the
When the whistle blows?
when the whistle blows is like kind of parodying shows like One Foot in the Grave because it's like catchphrases and broad comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
Because
would
he's
imagine.
like, "Are we having a laugh?" It's like,
Yeah.
I
having a laugh?
still can't say that without thinking of Extras.
Yeah.
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 but I laugh.
Yeah. This sitcom, Father Ted has an energy of live improv
Mhm.
when you're watching it. Like the
Yeah.
energy of the scenes, the pacing of the scenes. I mean, it's obviously written, it's obviously structured, but there's something about the pacing that has that flavor. And even like that whole little subplot where so when Jack's on the mainland, he ends up going off wandering, and his glasses, his new pair of glasses, have been stolen by crows.
Obviously.
And so he can't see where he's going, and he's wandering around. But there's a running joke that his vision's terrible except the word drink, which comes in totally clearly. So he sees a sign, and the only word he can make out on the
Is
sign
drink.
is drink. And he goes in. Little does he know, it's actually an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and he gets drawn into this AA meeting. But the only word he can say out loud when they ask him
Is
to
drink.
tell his story is just screaming the word drink. And they're all just trying to comfort him and be sympathetic and supportive. And he ends up making it to a bar eventually and orders a drink. And as he's about to take a sip, one of the guys from the AA meeting who had spotted him go in there, follows him in thinking he's going to like save him from
Yeah.
from this bad decision making or whatever, and tries to stop him and grabs the drink out of his hand, and it just hard cuts to an
It
ambulance.
is such a funny thing because he starts saying like, I know you don't believe me, but you'll, and it doesn't even get through the sentence before
Yeah,
the
not even
hard
through the
cut to
sentence.
the ambulance.
Hard-
Like
it's one of
Yeah.
the hardest
it
cuts
cuts
I've ever
so much
seen in a comedy.
It cuts so much
Yeah.
quicker than you would expect.
Yeah.
And it makes it all that all that much funnier because I think the instinct on that would be to have him complete the sentence, take a beat, and then a hard cut, and they don't even get through the sentence. And it's such a funny editing bit.
Yeah.
It's a well-edited, well-paced style of humor.
I'm gonna be rewatching this now.
Me too. Totally.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch the rest of it.
Funny.
There's only 25 episodes,
so
which
it's an easy binge.
Quite lengthy for a UK show.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for anyone listening who doesn't know this difference in standard, like we, analyze a lot of American sitcoms that last, let's say, 25 episodes, and they get canceled at that point. And in 90s America, that would be
one season.
Yeah, or Canada. That would not only be like one season or 1.5 seasons, but that would be considered a failure. Whereas in the UK and Ireland, this was a standard successful run for a show.
Yeah.
3 short seasons plus a long like Christmas special or something to cap it off. That's the norm. There's
only 2 seasons of The Office.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So again, by our standards, you'd say, oh, it's only 25 episodes. Maybe it's a failed show. It's not a failed show. No. And it did exceptionally, like people still watch it in syndication. Yeah. It's just sort of unknown or forgotten here from our North American perspective.
So again, we have to keep reiterating how it fits our criteria. Yeah. Because it is absolutely not a failure. No. It's just
it's a no. Like dumb North Americans. I'm standing by. I think we broke. I think we broke formula, and I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I mean, whether it fits exactly or not, ultimately it's a show that I'm glad we watched and talked about. It dovetails nicely with us meeting up in Ireland as well. But yeah, it's so interesting to see because this is 95 to 98, which is really chronologically the sweet spot of sitcoms that we remember from that era and like when they were at their peak. And so to see the stark difference in style of humor, production style, everything that they were doing, it's
interesting, because this is going on at the same. This is on at the same time as Friends and Seinfeld, right? Like, in their peaks, the showrunners of this were like apparently they're very outspoken as being like huge Seinfeld fans, like and considered a huge inspiration while they were working on this.
That's funny. Yeah.
That is funny.
It's interesting. Yeah. And if you just without knowing, just look at the way this is shot and the production design, you'd actually maybe assume that it's an even older show.
Yeah.
But
it did seem older.
80s.
I was very surprised.
80s.
Yeah, it looked very
you'd think 80s, not mid to late 90s. Yeah. And I think there's a couple of factors. One is the production design, and this is probably a deliberate choice. Looks very dated, but I think the point is that the house they're living on in this island is supposed to look like very
it's supposed to
dated
be
and kind of a little rough around the edges. And
it's a remote place. They're not going to have access to all the latest
to like nice new stuff. And it's the combination of that and the fact that the kind of cameras that I think the BBC used for sitcoms at the time were more like broadcast cameras. Yeah. I don't think it was shot on film.
No, and they also it might have been filmed, who knows, but like the BBC famously still not big budgets, right? I mean, it's much more than they used to. But
it looks low budget, but in a way that works so well for the humor as compared to that one Canadian show that we that we analyzed that looked like it was made in a high school class or something.
Not my department.
That show looked cheap in a way that was like very weird. Whereas this, like the visual style just suits the humor so well. And they do some of the sight gags are in some ways high production value, like the way the TV explodes, the way they incorporate helicopter shots, the amount of outdoor location shooting. It's just a very different production style that in some ways seems very indie, but in other ways it's just very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So again, this is not a BBC show though. It's Channel 4. Channel 4. It's a completely different show or thing. They're like a
Channel 4 is part of the BBC, though.
No,
Isn't it?
no, they're all BBC One, BBC Two, BBC. Channel 4 is its own thing. It still exists. Channel 4 still exists.
Okay.
I mean, mind you, let's not expect any of us to be experts on, because all I know is that I thought it was BBC when I was writing my stuff, and I was like, oh, it's not. It's Channel 4. So it's a British free-to-air public broadcast channel
Okay.
owned by Channel 4 Television Corporation. It's It's publicly owned, but unlike the BBC, it receives no public funding.
Oh.
It's
Okay.
funded entirely by its own commercial activities.
Oh. Little sidebar, when I made funny videos in high school, the fake TV network I used was Channel 4 Television.
Oh.
And I don't know what inspired that. I have no memory of why I did that, but every single video that I made in high school was produced by Channel 4. So,
Okay.
so
Well,
there you go.
Same production values.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. But maybe not quite this honestly not as dark and twisted as this. It's
Yeah,
It's-
I hope not. They probably would have had
Yeah.
you talking to somebody.
I can't remember which character said this line. So this was one of the things that I found kind of jarring, because again, you look at the aesthetic of it, it almost feels more old. But
yeah.
then there would be occasional like lines of dialogue that would reference pop culture that reminds you when and where it actually takes place. Can't remember which character said, I liked the English patient.
Oh, it's
Very
Father Noel.
Father Noel. Very confusing and very, very boring. I love how he liked it because it's very, very confusing and very, very boring, which I found so funny.
Very, yeah, I
Yeah.
really like that too. Yeah, apparently one of their famous episodes is a big parody of Speed.
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
And then there's it is weird because I kept getting thrown off too, because like they're sitting at a restaurant and Father Ted, takes out a mobile phone, and like I'm like, oh my god, like Buffy didn't even have a mobile phone.
yeah. Brynn laughed so hard at Father Ted getting beat up outside the caves.
Yeah,
And
I did.
The
It
kind
was
of
very
reaction and the kind of humor of that scene.
and I don't laugh at those
No.
kinds of gags usually.
I know,
but
and not
I found it very funny.
Yeah, it's the way it played
Yeah.
out.
Yeah,
And what it
yeah.
reminds me of, not the whole series, but that gag reminds me of our current favorite comedy, I Think You Should Leave, in the way that, like, there will often be a character who puts themselves in situations where they basically get their ass handed to them by someone else
Yeah.
because they are just so out to lunch. Like they're not trying to be aggressive in any way, but just, it felt like such a Tim Robinson moment of just shouting a catchphrase at an actor, getting his ass kicked, and then still relentlessly trying to say the catchphrase again as he's getting beat up, and they're just getting repeatedly beat up throughout the rest of the
maybe
episode.
I should just do it again. Maybe he didn't
Yeah,
understand
maybe he
what
just
I was
didn't hear
doing.
me. Maybe he just didn't understand. Yeah.
And it's very funny because it is Ted too, because like I
Yeah.
think
Because
again,
he's not zany.
yeah,
usually.
he's not zany.
Yeah.
He's the everyman, and like Dougal's the one you expect to say it, and it's Ted who does it, and it's just all the more funny for that.
Yeah.
Oh man,
So
what a
funny.
show! I'm so glad we covered this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here laughing, thinking about it.
Yeah. 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 It's a very different style. It's a kind of surrealism and a kind of humor that I've seen before, but never in this package.
Yeah.
Never like put together like this.
Yeah.
It's individual jokes and gags in it feel like something either out of a movie like Airplane kind of surrealism,
Yeah.
or character driven silliness like you'd see in Kids in the Hall, or an energy and pacing of live improv. Like there's all these different styles coming together to form this very unique thing that I have not seen before
Mhm.
ever.
I don't know why. I just think just a really dumb like reoccurring gag. Just every time Dougal looks outside and they just cut to like stock footage of
Yeah.
first a hurricane.
Yeah.
And he goes, lovely weather out. And then the next time is just a protracted giant close up of a bunch of ants crawling through a tree. And he just turns back and goes, ants are back, Ted.
Yeah. Like, what? So, Brynn, this might be an interesting and challenging one. Can you connect Father Ted with Friends?
Yeah, so I can. Yeah, surprisingly. So actually, it's interesting because I went through the, like, you know, all the main characters. My strategy when I'm doing 6 Degrees of Friends is I always just go through the main characters and see if they happen to guest star on Friends. None of them had, but the 2 different connections that I found were through Pauline McLynn, who played Mrs. Doyle.
Oh.
So she's a very successful actor, which we'll get into in the spinoff. But basically, there's 1 3-degree connection and 1 4-degree connection.
Oh.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it's
Have
interesting.
we ever had a 4 before?
I don't know.
No, it's
maybe.
just all like, it's all 1.5
Yeah,
to
yeah.
fucking Ursula Buffet.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then, okay. And so what I will say as a little disclaimer is the 4-degree connection. A lot of these are through films. So it's not the purest connection.
Oh, we do.
In that,
No, we do films. We've.
I know we do films, but lately I've been trying to keep it within the sitcom world and within sort of a decade of that sitcom. But, okay, so here they are. So the 3-degree connection is, so Pauline McLynn co-starred in the film Quills with, like, Kate Winslet and Jeffrey Rush, but also Joaquin Phoenix. Joaquin Phoenix co-starred in Walk the Line with Reese Witherspoon, and Reese Witherspoon guest starred on Friends.
Good. That's good.
That's good.
Yeah, so that's a
very
3-degree
good.
connection.
That's good. Yeah.
Okay, so Pauline McLynn also co-starred in the UK version of Shameless, which I didn't know was a thing, apparently.
It was on
So-
almost as long as the American one for some reason.
Yeah. So she was one of the stars of Shameless, okay, which was created by Paul Abbott, who also created the American version. So Paul Abbott went on to create the US version, which co-starred Joan Cusack. Joan Cusack co-starred in the film Friends with Money alongside Jennifer Aniston, and Jennifer Aniston, of course, starred as Rachel Green on Friends.
Nice.
So that's 4 degrees.
Nicely done.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it, you know, I thought, oh, no way there's going to be a connection. There was. So giddy up.
That's good.
Giddy up.
That's good.
Giddy up indeed.
For the spinoff, I mean, the general note is, as always, most of the cast went on to do really awesome things and had successful careers. Unfortunately, the lead, as Barry already mentioned, Dermot Morgan, Father Ted himself, sadly passed away right after filming the last episode. So he'll basically always have the legacy of being Father Ted, which is not a bad thing, you know, like it's pretty good. It's pretty darn good that, he went out with this like very funny, very like legendary show. But as far as the rest of the cast goes, like, again, they all had successful careers in film and television, like some notable stuff to mention. Ardal O'Hanlon, who played Dougal, went on to be a successful character actor and voice actor. Notable roles include Nellie and Nora, Death in Paradise, and recently he guest starred on Dairy Girls, which I gotta pick up Dairy Girls again because it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to get back into.
Yeah. Pauline McLynn is perhaps maybe the most successful of the bunch. She's done so much film and television. She's had a very busy career in both film and TV, with roles in films like Angela's Ashes, Quills.
Sorry, you got to take that again, just because.
Yeah,
I just immediately it was like a weird, depressing porn version of Angela's Ashes.
Okay, so she co-starred in films including Angela's Ashes, Quills. And as I already mentioned, she was in the UK version of Shameless. She also had a stint on EastEnders, which like everybody in the Europe has.
Which was a show that they made fun of on Extras
That's
all
Oh,
the
that's
time.
where- yeah,
Well, Barry from EastEnders.
Barry
Yeah,
from EastEnders. Yeah. He's only Barry from EastEnders.
Yeah. That was the best part of that show,
yeah.
by the way. Those little meetings with the agent.
Oh, Stephen,
Those are the best
Stephen
bits,
Merchant.
yeah.
And she's also a successful novelist, apparently. Frank Kelly, who played Father Jack, continued to work steadily in film and television despite playing such a despicable character. He was able to get other roles and things. He had a long run on a show called Emmerdale Farm, and sadly he passed away in 2016. But yeah, working for the rest of his life until his death. A couple of the other actors, with recurring roles, including Tony Guilfoyle and Patrick Drury, did a lot of television as well, and both appeared in The Crown. So, like you'll see a lot of these actors popping in and out of like that shows that are either UK shows or American shows that are set in the UK. So yeah, they've all done just fine for themselves. And lastly, but not least, Graham Norton. He's like
He's a legend, man.
kind of.
He's a legend.
He's a queer icon. He's like a TV hosting legend. Like, so basically, it's very funny to see him play like this kind of role because I know him as a TV personality, like as a very prolific host.
Like as himself.
Yeah, as himself.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was kind of cool. I was like, is that Graham Norton? Like I did a double take because he's so young in it. And yeah, so he's playing this character. So he started as a comedic actor, but then like obviously found way more success as a host and personality. So he's done all kinds of hosting for the types of shows where there's performances. Notably the Eurovision Song Contest. Like, so he's hosted various years of that, as well as being like a judge. He had his own show, The Graham Norton Show, which was a late night show, like a very famous late night show, which ran from 2007 to this year. He's also been super active in the entire like Drag Race franchise. So that's where I first really became a fan, because I'm a huge Drag Race fan. So he's, popped up as a guest judge in the American version. So both the original Drag Race as well as All Stars. He was one of the main judges of Drag Race UK, as well as UK versus the World, and the most recent sort of spin-off, which is Queen of the Universe. So yeah, so he's huge in that sort of arena of, being a very prolific host for drag shows as well as other like live performances. So he's like the host
Oh yeah.
for like UK shows.
I was trying to
And
figure.
he's very endlessly charming and endlessly charismatic, in my opinion.
I feel like it's possible I'm trying to figure out, he might still have his show. He might just be taking a very long break to do the Eurovision
maybe.
stuff. I was trying to figure
he
out.
might be.
I was trying to figure out that earlier, and it just I think
Yeah.
maybe he's just taken maybe the rest of the year off.
Maybe. Yeah, it just said until 2023.
He's just fucking great.
I mean, he's busy. He's like he's like their Ryan Seacrest, but better.
But way better. He's honest.
Like he's like in everything.
He's honestly like, I think he's maybe one of my favorite like talk show hosts. I wish they syndicated him a bit more over here instead of me just having to watch him on YouTube. But I watch a fair bit of interviews he does, and he's always just a complete riot.
Delight. He also played himself in the Eurovision movie. The very funny Eurovision movie.
So a fun little bit of Graham Norton there is that in one of the American remakes that all
of Father Ted that they tried
to do, he was cast as Dougal.
That's funny.
And he was going to be opposite. And this is casting that I like, Steve Martin as Father Ted.
That would have been fun.
Yeah. And Yeah, and that one I guess came pretty close to happening. There was two
Oh my
main
God.
ones that came close to happening. That one, and then the John Michael Higgins one, which I like John Michael Higgins, but I don't see it. I really don't see it.
You know who would be a good Dougal is Diedrich Bader.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's good. That is really good. That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, mind you,
Yeah, I can see that.
God knows, I have no idea how old Diedrich Bader might be now.
Yeah. When he was young, like I'm thinking like Drew,
Oh,
Drew Carey era.
Well, then for sure.
He was just hilarious on that show.
Yeah,
That's a show that I'd like to get around to talking about at some point.
the Drew Carey
Yeah,
show.
'cause
Absolutely, I loved the Drew Carey show
I
growing
watched
up.
so much of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also watched
I watched
a fair bit of
almost until the end, and I think I did actually watch the finale because I had watched
Yeah.
most of it. Fun
I
Fun
always
little fact.
enjoyed.
Do you remember? Does anybody remember who the last female lead on the Drew Carey show was?
The last.
Yes, because Kristen Miller left.
Yeah.
And then
There was a blonde, the blonde.
that's right.
Then
Is
I
that
don't
who
know.
am I thinking of?
That's right.
But like I remember her from the Drew Carey show. I don't remember her from anything else.
Oh, you might.
Oh, what? Okay, sorry. Now I'm gonna have to Google this.
Caitlin Olsen.
What?
What?
Yeah. She did. She was in the last
No.
season.
No, but she wasn't like the.
I think you're thinking
His
of.
love
I think you're
interest.
thinking of maybe Cynthia Watros.
I think that's
who
who
also
I'm
didn't
thinking
make
of,
it to
yeah.
the end.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's absolutely who I was thinking of. Yeah.
Cynthia Watros, she was in a lot of things. She was in Titus. She was in but Caitlin Olsen, to the point where like that was when I wasn't watching Drew Carey. So Drew Carey had
Right.
like one last season where I think they burned off most of the episodes where she was the lead there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a fun
show. Fun show. Okay.
Any leftovers?
No, I guess I just want to say, I mean the opening credits font, the traditional Celtic font is very funny.
The credits themselves, like it's a very Monty Python-esque gag. But
Yeah.
the fact that there's like a helicopter, an aerial shot of them, and then it crashes into them is pretty funny.
Yes, and the
very
detail-
Monty Python.
Very Monty
Yeah.
Python, and the detail that I liked most about that is
Mhm.
before the crash, as they start to lead into that joke, you hear the sound of the helicopter.
Yeah.
That was a very nice touch. Yeah, I guess my final thought is that it's very interesting that this show is the #1 all-time sitcom made in Ireland.
Yeah.
Because it's not that it's a style of humor that doesn't exist elsewhere. There are things made in the US and Canada that have this level of silliness or this level of darkness, but it'd be very rare for those things to be the #1
Exactly.
mainstream show.
Usually the biggest mainstream show is something more wholesome or something we wouldn't enjoy. Like, The Big Bang Theory in the States was like the #1 show for like so long in the States. And we were just like, ugh.
Yeah,
Everybody-
This is
Everybody loves Raymond.
Yeah. Or
Not this guy.
like in Canada, like the #1 show for so long was Corner Gas. And that was totally not our cup of tea or our humor.
So this is as if a show as crazy as I Think You Should Leave was the #1 mainstream show.
Yeah, so kudos to
This is Always Sunny basically being a ratings juggernaut.
Yeah.
If It's Always Sunny was the show that your parents watched and you watched and little kids watched and is just the mainstream show.
Although it is dark, it's not as dark, and they don't push the envelope as far as It's Always Sunny.
No.
So,
But part of that is also it's a very small sandbox.
yeah.
They're only deriving humor from the actions and relationships of 3 very specific characters living in this house. And but also interestingly enough, that recent season of It's Always Sunny, they go to Ireland,
Yeah.
which
Very funny.
Barry, you recommended that we watch. We watched it. It's like a 3-episode arc. Very funny.
Very, very,
Yeah.
very,
And-
very funny.
And as you also mentioned, Charlie Day's dramatic scene.
Yeah.
Oh
in
my
it
God. It
was
broke my heart.
Genuinely, like I teared up.
Yeah.
It
It's,
was
Yeah.
genuinely dramatic
up,
pathos.
Yeah, it's up there with the Max scene as like
Yeah.
this came
Yeah.
out of nowhere for me.
Yeah.
And it really devastated me.
Yeah.
I was very amazed.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Mr. Producer. Hello, Mr. P. How are you doing?
Hello, Mr. Yeger. This is Raleigh Prince Jeffries calling for Mr. Producer.
Yeger. Okay, put him through, Raleigh.
Hey, kid. Sorry to call a bit early. I got a little excited. It's got to say, it's good to hear your voice. Been a little while, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. How are you doing these days, Mr. P?
Good. With everything going on with the WGA, that's it. It's on pause. So I found myself on a bit of a hiatus, so I'm just trying to enjoy life, seeing the sights, smelling the air.
Eating pickles?
Every kind under the sun, my boy.
Well, this week we're talking about Father Ted.
Father Ted, sure. Big show across the pond. A lot of us on this end, we tried to get our own remake going. There was the Steve Martin, Graham Norton one. There was, the James Jesse Matthews guy.
John Michael Higgins.
Sure, him too. But after those ones fell through, me and Genuine Class Productions, we picked up the slack and we were developing one for, 3-4 years easily.
Nothing came of it?
No, which is a real shame, too. We were talking to Bryan Cranston for a bit.
Oh, for Father Ted? That's interesting casting.
Oh, no. We're talking to Cranston. He had Eric Persullivan's phone number. Dewey from Malcolm's in the Middle. That kid could have been huge.
You wanted him for Father Ted?
Sure. Just think about it. Ted, he's a young guy. He's uncertain in the world. All of a sudden, his fiance's pregnant. What's a young ad exec to do? He's on his way to the top, but now he's Father Ted. That was basically the pitch.
Did you ever watch the original?
I did not. It had some sort of talking teddy bear, I think. Swore a lot, right?
Well, I'll let you get back to your life of pickles.
I like that. That's going on the tombstone.
Yeah, he definitely didn't watch the show.
I don't think he watches many of these shows.
That's funny. Well, this was a fun one to talk about.
Yeah.
Thank you,
absolutely.
everyone, for listening.
I'm gonna go
And,
watch more.
Yeah. Until next time, slancha.
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 That Was a Show is created and hosted by Brynn Byrne, Andrew Barry Helmer, and myself, Aaron Yeger. It's a production of Radio Gizmo in Toronto, Canada. Subscribe, rate, review, and share. Follow us on Instagram and tell your friends about it. That Was a Show?
Radio Gizmo.